Good afternoon, everybody. Pete Wassell of Augmate is here to talk to us today about how distributed ledgers can tackle IoT's biggest flaws. Please welcome Pete Wassell.
Thank you. My name's Pete Wassell, and I'm the founder of Augmate. Today I'll be talking about how blockchain is a really great fit for IoT. I'll give you a little background about the company, where we started, how we've progressed over the last couple years. So we're an existing business. We have customers like Peugeot, Verizon, UPS, Toyota, AGCO, so Fortune 500 type companies. I'll give a little bit background about how we got started and how we're moving into IoT and how we're using blockchain to do that. All right, so really, over the next couple years, we're going to see a tremendous amount of devices hitting the market. So in the next, by 2020, we're looking at about 50 billion IoT devices. By 2025, it's upwards of 250 billion IoT devices. And within the next 10 to 20 years, it's about 1 trillion devices. And the cost of sensors are coming down to the point where we believe this kind of technology will be embedded in the products, or at least the packaging that you get. They'll be pretty much everywhere, and we believe that within the next few years, you won't be able to buy a piece of equipment, a device, an appliance that's not connected to the internet. And so what we're building for is essentially the 4th generation of the internet. And when we think about the 3rd generation, which is what we believe to be mobile, just like you didn't know you were going to need this in 2006, you've come to love it, your life depends on it. The same thing's going to happen with the 4th generation of the internet. So in other words, the applications and services that go on top of this infrastructure layer of connected devices, you're going to feel the same way. You're going to say to yourself, I love these services, I can't live without them. And that's really what we're building towards. So it's really our goal to be the #1 leader when it comes to IoT, device management, and the services around IoT. And I'll talk about in this discussion how blockchain really makes sense for this technology. And hopefully you agree, and then afterwards, hopefully we have a little time for some Q&A if you have any questions. So first I'm going to talk about the background of IoT and why we've selected this in kind of our transition. So back in 2006, there was a white paper that was written in Germany called Industry 4.0, and the paper was all about the marriage of science and industry. And it was pretty groundbreaking, the way it was described of how devices could be connected and how productivity could increase. And within a couple years, the German cabinet got behind this paper and said, hey, this makes a lot of sense. We're a very industrious type company. Let's put some money behind it. Let's get companies involved and really see where it goes. And that really is what became Industry 4.0. Or the 4th industrial revolution. And really what started to happen was companies that implemented this were able to see upwards of about 30% on their bottom line. So that's a tremendous amount of increase to the kind of revenue that they're able to see, or margin that they're able to see. And just a quick history lesson here. First industrial revolution was all about water and steam that powered equipment. Second industrial revolution was about electricity and kind of Henry Ford model to doing assembly. The 3rd generation was really about autonomous robots. And when it came to manufacturing and assembly and these types of companies, most people thought that you've reached the limit when it came to efficiency, and that was the best you were going to do, autonomous robots. And that's what you see with, let's say, the automotive industry. But it really wasn't true. So connected devices adds a whole new layer of efficiency. So the communication between those devices and what can be done is really tremendous. And even though I'm using an industrial example, you're going to see the same thing in the home with consumer IoT devices and the applications and services involved with that technology. So why is this happening? So right now, we're seeing inexpensive sensors. They're getting cheaper and cheaper all the time. Computing power is going up. We're seeing large storage capacity that exists. So with big data, you're able to do analytics and those types of things, so data analysis. And then the connectivity of all this technology, as you can imagine, 5G is also going to do a lot for IoT. So all this together becomes Industry 4.0. And over here in this segment here, one of the technologies, AR, is where Augmate got started. So we were one of the first Glass at Work partners with Google. So we used the Google Glass device, one of 10 companies certified to work with them on that product. And what we learned was we were doing end user applications in the beginning on smart glass devices. And we were using Google's product and about 8 or 9 other smart glass devices. And what we learned was you could have a great application and do great pilots. The kind of applications that we would build going back 3.5 years ago were things like a pick and pack application in a warehouse, or instructional applications, workflow applications, these types of things. There's cameras on these devices, so you can do telepresence, see what I see, kind of knowledge transfer to, if you got a subject matter expert back in the office, you could have a generalist that goes on site and repairs things, but then the subject matter expert is guiding that person through repair or maintenance. And these were the kind of applications that we were building. And what we discovered was you could have a great application, a great pilot, but then boots on the ground, when you actually try to implement this into production, most companies didn't have the tools or processes to deploy fleets of wearables. So in other words, they were pretty good at deploying a tablet, let's say, device, but not so good on the wearable side. And really what they needed was the ability to remote wipe a device, reset someone's password, install applications from a central location, this type of thing, just like you would with any other kind of hardware device. So that kind of system was not in place. So we put together a platform that allowed companies to be able to do device management, user management, policies, security, over-the-air updates of both firmware and applications. And that's really what we focused on. So this is just saying that, from the market research, from the analytical companies, saying that the path that we were on, this is one of the reasons why we had chosen that technology. And, even though we always believed that wearables were a subset of IoT, at the time we were only focused on wearables. And the thought was, do this one thing and do it really, really well, and then expand into IoT. So that was really the plan. And this is one of the reasons why we had chosen wearables. This is a chart that came out of Forrester that shows, essentially they went out to the labor website and they analyzed all sorts of different jobs in the United States. And it was 264 different jobs would benefit from wearables. In other words, they would be more productive or more efficient just based on having these wearable devices. And it ends up being about 8% of the workforce. So again, we were purposefully choosing certain technology that we thought made sense, and we had market research to back that up. And just more information about why companies were moving towards IoT. We try to make decisions not on emotion, but based on empirical data, and this was part of it, pulling all that data together of why companies were moving into Industry 4.0 and why it made sense. Some of the things that we saw with working with some of our partners, so when we switched from just doing end user applications to having this platform that did really device management on wearables, we stepped away from those end user applications. And so we decided to partner with companies who were building the end user applications. So like that pick and pack application or that workflow application, we would just partner with those companies. And the kind of returns that we would see is upwards of about 6 times productivity, and that was in a wireframe harness. So like at Boeing, when you're doing the wiring, it's like 30,000 miles of wires. Using wearables would assist people and help them do it a lot faster. About 25% efficiency in a warehouse. And I've got another chart on that would just show why you'd get those kinds of improvements. On remote field maintenance, about $20 return on every dollar spent on those types of projects. And actually, we're doing a big project right now. It's a large telecom. I won't give the name, but they're taking us up on that offer. And then 44% improvement in accuracy in certain projects. Again, these were all things that were moving us in the direction of wearables and IoT. This is one of our partners. So as we moved away of doing our own end user applications, ended up partnering with about 50 companies that build software for wearables. And so early on, when we would be all competing with each other, and these were other Glass at Work partners and other folks that were building wearable software, when we decided to pivot and just focus on the platform side of it, I said, look, I don't want to step on your toes. I don't want to compete with you guys. Essentially, I want to take your application and push it out securely to scale at companies. And all of our competition became our partners at that point. So this is an example of how Ubimax in the warehouse, they were using smart glasses, and their error rate went down, and so did the efficiency. They had the quickest time on smart glasses and the lowest amount of errors. Likewise, this was another partner, Proceedix. The company that we were at was AGCO, and what we're showing here is originally, with tractor inspection, it would take 100 minutes to inspect the tractor when it came off the line. When using wearables and this solution, it went down to 70 minutes. So pretty significant. And really, this was just practical pilots that we were doing and seeing results, but they matched the results that were predicted in the marketplace when it came to IoT. So some of the predictions or some of the early studies out of Germany were showing 30% productivity or efficiency increase. So pretty significant, and we were seeing the same thing. This example here on IoT is really talking about the sharing of information. And this starts to get into why blockchain makes sense for IoT. In these new models, again, on the industrial side, there's situations where companies, let's say they don't want to buy the equipment, so instead they want to lease the equipment. So I'll give you an example. Let's say an airline gets a power washer, and so when the plane comes in, they wash down the plane. Now, they might not want to own that power washer, but they're only paying for it per hour. So that kind of information could be put up onto the cloud, let's say in blockchain, and then the hours recorded are seen by both companies, the airline, because they're paying for it. You can set up a smart contract to keep track of these things, automatically pay, and as well as information like, let's say, error codes. And there's other equipment as well that companies are really looking at to have this IoT type model. And the kind of situation that companies could be in traditionally, let's say there's equipment that you have that's, you're making widgets or whatever you're making, and for every hour that machine is down, the company's losing X. Let's say $10,000 an hour. So the traditional way of doing things is the person would come out to the site, they would interview employees, they would read the data off of this equipment, and then they would go order the part, come back a couple days later, and obviously that's not so efficient. if all those error codes and that information is written to the blockchain, they've got an opportunity to see that, understand that a part is getting worn out, show up either on site, they've ordered the part in advance, or maybe 3D print the part, whatever they want to do, saving time and saving money. And that's just one example. So Industry 4.0 is expected to be about a $15 trillion market by 2030. And it's just a huge opportunity. And that's all the applications and services that exist. So some people have wondered, is this going to kill jobs, IoT? And really, the surveys that have been done at most companies, about 87% of the business leaders believe that IoT is actually going to create jobs. So we're going to see a shift, more so people that are doing work like data scientist type work, and even the repair of machinery and that type of thing. So robots haven't taken over quite yet, and we'll actually should see a net increase of jobs. So when we started, we were really doing wearables and the provisioning of devices. And the way that we essentially operated was we would put software on a smart glass device. It was provisioning software, and it was signed by the keys of the hardware company, okay? And that allowed us to get special privileges on that device. In other words, we could essentially operate those devices from the web, okay? And this is an important part of our migration into all of IoT. So we used that method, and it worked really well, and it made sense. Of course, we're talking about 10 to 12 companies, so it was something manageable. We're able to have OEM hardware agreements with these companies. Our engineers would talk with their engineers. They would sign the applications, and that's how it would work. So then those devices were able to talk back to our AWS, Amazon Web Services application, and you'd be able to manage those devices through that method. Now, when you go from a wearable strategy, and even though wearables are a subset of IoT, the sheer number of IoT devices is way bigger, right? So as you move into managing all IoT devices, we're talking thousands of devices. So you can't quite have that same strategy. So instead, we're managing the data that goes in between devices, okay? And there's a number of different ways that we're doing this. So number one, we've got an ability to run data through a smart contract, and we can essentially allow it to be a gatekeeper, right? So you could check to see, does this device have the latest security patch? Did the people change the default password on it? In other words, not pass data to that device unless it's passed certain criteria. So that's part of it. The way our token works is on the outside, it's a fractional license access token. So just as you would go to an arcade and give $1 and then get your tokens back and play an arcade game, you could do the same thing with our platform. Internally, our token is kind of a point tracker. And what I mean is, the only way to explain it is, in a traditional sense, if you're selling software, let's say you've got a software license that's $100 for your software license, and you've got a customer that's got 15 computers. You would know what to charge them. It's $100 times 15, pretty straightforward. Well, with IoT, you can't quite do that. You're going to have everything from a 50-cent sensor at your customer site to a $100,000 piece of equipment that's IoT equipment. And then you have to start to think, am I charging by device? Am I charging by transaction? Am I charging by the data we share, or with their ecosystem and their partners, the data that they store, those types of things. And so we ended up developing our token to kind of, just as you would with Bitcoin, and kind of following it through the system of where it gets spent and whose hands it went through, but follow the token through the Augmate platform in order to keep track of those services, and so that we could fair and equitably charge our customers all the same. So we had internal reasons of why we were doing it. But in addition, there's a number of use cases of why blockchain makes sense within IoT. For example, if you've got data that you want, let's say, off-chain. So within a smart home or within a company, you might want to keep the data, locally. But as soon as you put it on the outside and you want to store it, you want to share it with business partners in an ecosystem, or if you're in a home application, I'll take any home application. Let's just say healthcare. So in the future, keep in mind, in the next 3 to 4 years, again, you're not going to be able to buy device or equipment or appliances that are not connected to the internet, right? But the applications and use cases on top of this layer are going to be significant. So we believe all this data that's going to be stored is going to, it's going to make it such that humans are going to rely on this. Big data, artificial intelligence is going to help humanity in such a way that it's hard to understand right now. But again, the same way you feel about your phone and those kinds of applications, you're going to feel about this next generation. So take healthcare. Your IoT scale that you step on will be connected to your Fitbit, that's connected to your fridge, that's connected to your Nest thermostat, that's connected to your health mirror, and you'll have to decide, do I want to share this data with my doctor? Do I want to share this data with my insurance company because maybe I'm getting a discount? Do I want to sell some of this data to the pharmaceutical company because I don't mind if they pitch me on a particular medicine if it's going to do me good? And all of this can be done with the blockchain. And so each one of these technologies is really based on a particular use case in order to make the most sense, with this technology. Just a couple roadmap things. All right, so when we got started, we first started using IOTA, if you know that protocol. It was really designed for IoT, kind of a blockless technology instead of blockchain technology. And we did a lot of testing on their private test nodes and then also some of the public nodes. And it did okay. And I'll say this. Blockchain makes sense for IoT, but there's a subset of protocols that make sense for it. So in other words, a mining compensation model doesn't work well with IoT. So in other words, if you had to wait 45 minutes for someone to write a block to the blockchain and then compensate it in a certain kind of way, that won't be good for IoT. In other words, we need high volume, microtransaction, and kind of micro payments is what's really good for IoT. So if you go to CoinMarketCap, you're going to see a lot of different protocols, on the first page. There's a subset that makes sense for IoT, and those are the ones that we work with. So we're currently benchmarking IOTA, Hashgraph, Hyperledger, EOS, Bitcoin Lightning. These are some of the ones that we've been using. And so we're making decisions about which ones really make sense, for our kind of system. This chart, this is one of the first charts I had when we started a couple years ago, and it still makes sense. Our platform is about security, scalability, and integration. And even though our platform is on AWS, we're able to containerize it. We can put it into Docker, and we load it up onto an IoT gateway. So an IoT gateway is like your Linksys router at your house. And it's got additional antennas on it. So it's got Wi-Fi, it's got Bluetooth, it's got Zigbee, all those types of things. And when you plug in an IoT device, it broadcasts, and then we're able to pick it up. And there's visualization tools to be able to manage the data and what you do with that kind of data. So our Mate coin, just a little background. When we first got started about 3 years ago, we raised $3.5 million, and that was an equity round. Tim Draper had led that round with us, but it's also Rothenberg Ventures, UPS Ventures, Funding Post, Excel Partners, Siemens Venture Capital. So a lot of venture capital companies had invested in us. And we had a decision to make if we were going to do a Series A investment or to do an ICO. And because blockchain was in the design of our roadmap, we decided to do an ICO. So the beginning of the year, we got started on Launch. They're the same ICO platform that's doing the Overstock ICO. And just recently, we went on to CoinList. And so we've brought in $12 million based on those ICO platforms. We've been on CoinList for about a week. but it goes to June 15th. And if anyone wants to talk about that, I'd be happy to do so. And we've got Brian Feinberg in the audience who would also be willing to talk to investors. And essentially, this is the use of funds. My background, I'm a former IBMer. I've run projects, $100 million projects for IBM out of Silicon Valley. I've had hundreds of people on my team and feel very comfortable taking new products and emerging technology to market. And so I think we're going to do very well with our platform. If anyone is interested in learning more, we'll be over in the Bitcoin Lounge and happy to talk about it. These are some of our clients and partners. And that's it. Thank you so much.
We're actually out of time for questions, but if you would like to chat, our next speaker is on in about 10 minutes.